Welcome everyone to week two. So first week, the recording was done via Microsoft Teams, and I've invited you all to join the chat. I think some of you had to manually request access to lecture one. If you don't have access to that, please reach out via email and we can coordinate accordingly. Week two, again, this is a recording that will be posted via Moodle. Teams isn't so friendly for individual recordings, so I'm doing this via Zoom. Again, it won't be live, so it'll just be a recording that you can access at any time. So week one, we looked at learning objective one, right? Provincial, territorial, security, regulatory authorities, purpose and roles. And then we did chapter one with respect to Kapoor or Jack Kapoor's personal finance book. For week two, we're looking at a continuation of the initial learning objective, and we'll touch on chapter two. Okay. What I decided to do, given the change in schedules, was to move assignment one back 1 week. So be due January 30th. That's the Friday. I'll update that. Actually, I'll update the syllabus and I'll re-upload, provide an announcement corresponding with that as well. Okay. This gives you a little bit more time. Again, no excuses for late submissions, especially with this 1 week extension. Everything else will stay the same in terms of due dates, so nothing else moves back as of today. Okay. Starting week three, we will, to the best of our ability, resume in class. So those of you who can come to class, please ensure you do so. You'll get a little bit more out of the in-person lectures, at least in my opinion. And then what I typically like to do after the lecture is hold a Q&A, try and get to know some of the students, those of you who are in the greater Sudbury area and looking to stay in the area, maybe build a little bit of a career after you're done your studies, or even during summer placements or looking for part-time work. I think there's a lot of opportunity where we're at, especially within the finance space. Okay, so we will just go to, again, syllabus will be updated once again, and I'll provide an announcement. We'll just go to Moodle quickly. So all assessments, aside from the capstone project, which is in progress, that will be posted and clear instructions to action it will be provided with expectations in a rubric. Outside of that, the remaining 70% of assessments will be done through McGraw-Hill Connect. So you do have to register and purchase the textbook and the link, the McGraw-Hill Connect access. Okay. So your assignment one, assignment two, midterm, and your final will be strictly on McGraw-Hill Connect. If you're having issues, please reach out. Outside of that, it should be pretty straightforward. Assignment number one and two being 10% each. These are going to be your easiest marks in this class. So don't skip on them. There are quite a few questions, but it should be a relatively straightforward 20%. Capstone project will be tough. Midterm and final will also require some good studying and some good notes. So we will go to MFDA and IROC items. So we're just going to touch on this. I think it's 10 slides quickly for the regulatory bodies continued, and then we're going to go into chapter two, money management strategy. Okay. So, Canadian regulatory bodies, the IROC and MFDA, important for those of you who want to be in the CFP space or PFP, financial planning space. Essentially, you want to be involved in mutual funds, insurance, so on and so forth. This is the regulatory body that you will be subject to follow. Okay. So IROC, regulations of trading securities, including stocks and mutual funds. And those of you already involved in the market will know that this body does oversee a lot of this stuff. If you have been an active trader at some point, there's a component of this body that oversees activity within the market. So if there's a sharp increase or a sharp decrease in a stock price, they will automatically trigger a freeze, right? They will halt trading in that one security, pending investigation, so on and so forth. This is the body that oversees the insider, any potential for insider trading, and enforces and so on and so forth. Okay. So they are designed to protect investors. If one insider is holding all the shares or the majority of the shares of the company and is exiting right after a pump and dump, if you will, this body will be responsible in ensuring that those individuals partake in an illegal activity or trying to take advantage of retail investors are punished, right? So mandate again, investor protection, market integrity, and compliance thereof. All securities that are listed on Canadian types of exchanges do have to follow IROC regulations and more particularly if you're out of Ontario, OSC, Ontario Securities Commission has a mandate and rules and regulations to also abide by. So penalties enforced by IROC, they're fines. So they can fine members for violations, right? Suspensions. They can suspend licenses. If a planner is not acting in the best interest of consumer, right? Then you can be subject to losing your license and being fined, potential jail time as well. Revocation, same thing. Functions of the MFDA, so the mutual fund dealer. So they regulate the sale of mutual funds in Canada, across the country, and they also, much like IROC, set the standards for the dealer conduct. Okay, what can be sold, how these certain securities are need to be sold or can be marketed towards a specific group of individuals. Okay, and their mandate, much like IROC, investor protection, market integrity, and member regulation. Okay, so a lot of these regulatory bodies, much like we talked about last lecture, are all tied to the same core values. Okay, so fine, suspensions, and revocation if somebody or representative in that group is found to be negligent to retail investors, right? Misrepresentation, essentially, sell something for their own personal benefit. The dispute resolution process, it does go through some stages. So typically, if something is, if consumers are complaining or a complaint is set forward, there's some level of investigation, and then it goes to a negotiation if there is some dispute that is in a scenario of a he said, she said, right? If it's strictly breaking the law, then obviously that's subject to whatever punishment may be applicable. Then there's mediation and arbitration, right? Maybe reversing the investment in some level of potential fine to the dealer, right? If it's something that, again, wasn't really breaking a law, but didn't abide by the mandate or the proper laws, legislations, and procedures on selling that security to an individual group. So what typically happens on annual types of reviews when a certified financial or professional financial planner sells a group of securities to individual, right? They have to go through some level of risk assessment. So you're selling a 100% stock portfolio to a 90-year-old retiree that may not have the longest time horizon. That is something that may be seen as a conflict, right? And why do some dealers opt to do that? Well, one, shouldn't be, but sometimes these mutual funds or these types of securities offer different levels of compensation. Obviously, higher risk, higher reward, right? But again, if it's not sold to the right, or you're not enrolling the right individual, right, to the best interest of that person or those groups of individuals, then that's on you, right? You're doing it for the wrong reasons. The benefits, just on the flip side, right, of the regulatory oversight, gives investors some level of confidence. So when you're working with professional financial planner under specific umbrella, right, if they're from RBC, the largest chartered bank in Canada, right, that gives you some level of confidence. They claim they're a financial planner out of Joe's Financial Planning 123. Might be a little bit different. Okay. Market stability. So they reduce the risk to contribute to market stability. So they essentially don't allow certain types of securities to be put into these groups of mutual funds, and more particularly high risk things that might be more over the counter or out of the scope of a traditional investor, right? And there's some regulatory bodies such as the OSC and exempt types of securities, so EMD, exempt market dealers that do play in the higher risk space. Typically, they will sell to accredited investors or qualified individuals, right? High net worth individuals that can afford to lose larger sums of money, right? High risk, high reward scenario. And then the fair play for market participants associated, right? So as an average Joe going into getting into investments, you likely want to work with a trusted advisor and not come in one day and see your portfolio down 50%, right? Because they've invested in high risk pre-revenue types of companies. Okay? So key takeaways: IIROC mostly for securities, MFDA is still mutual funds, and then both of them are tied to investor protection. Okay, they prioritize that. That being said, a lot of these intro slides, the regulatory authorities also have. Hopefully, I'm sharing the right screen. Bear with me. Also have additional links associated with that regulatory body on Moodle. So what I'm going to do is, I think I am sharing my entire screen. I'm gonna reshare here, make sure that. Okay, see the desktop now. So that, apologies if the IIROC and MFDA slides were not presented like so, but again, straightforward, and you guys have access to them via Moodle. What I was referring to are links to each of the websites are also posted underneath the announcements, right, for Moodle. So go into these, do some additional reading. You will require, there will be a requirement to pull some of the content, right, that might not have necessarily been presented in class to integrate into your capstone project. Okay, again, more details to come, but these, what I'm trying to get to is the links are not posted for no reason. Okay. So if there are any questions associated, please reach out via email, or do come into class or join Teams via class. You can ask those questions after class or on break, depending on how we structure off the class. Okay, so going into chapter 2, money management and strategy, financial statements and budgeting. So chapter 1 to 1 and 2, that won't change. Those are the two chapters that are going to be focused on within assignment 1, because week 1 and week 2. Okay, I'll touch on some of the regulatory bodies associated, provincial, territorial, and the IIROC and MFDA. Maybe some questions associated with that too. Okay. So we'll go through learning objectives quick. We don't have to go through the summary because we'll go through everything in class. Again, some of the slides in this textbook, not my favorite, tend to be a little redundant. So we'll jump through the ones that are, and I will focus on the items that are a little bit more pertinent to your assignments in your midterm. Okay. So recognize relationships among financial documents and money management activities, create a system for maintaining personal financial records, develop a personal balance sheet and a cash flow statement, create and implement a budget, and calculate savings needed to achieve financial goals. So money management will yield benefits. Daily spending and saving decisions are at the center of financial planning, right? So you have to kind of know what's coming in versus what's going out, right? Much like a business, cash inflows versus outflows. Are you spending more than you're making, right? Are you spending it before you're making it? That's very important. That's what the framework of budgeting is designed to portray. Okay, so you need to coordinate decisions with whatever your goals and your personal financial situations are, right? Ensure that you're living within your means, and then maintaining those records are essential for the reason that you need to ensure that you're not spending more than you make, because you'll end up in too large of a deficit one day to recover from, and therefore have to, some consumers will have to declare bankruptcy, right? Which is not what you want to do. So opportunity cost and money management, right? Spending money on what you currently may need it for will impact the amount that you want to save, right? How do you want to live? Do you need to live in a fancy apartment or a fancy house to start? Or do you want to do that, right? And if you don't need to, what can you get by with, and what is the opportunity cost thereof? So fancy 2-bedroom apartment for yourself, right? Might cost you here in Sudbury, I don't know, $2,000, $2,500 a month, right? Whereas a bachelor apartment, you might be able to find for $1,000 a month. So the opportunity cost of the 1,000 to 1,500, depending on how you're saving it or you're investing it, right? Could be substantially could be substantial in the long term, right? Especially if you're growing that at 8, 9, 10% annualized. Okay? So buying on credit, right? There are some exceptions thereof, but this is just more pertaining to leveraging funds that you may not have, right? I think that most people have a credit card. I have many credit cards, more for the points and depending on what the spending situation is, right? I have certain cards that provide more points for food and groceries. I have certain cards that provide more points or insurance benefits for traveling, right? And buying high ticket goods, right? Electronics, for example. So if you are using credit, right, hopefully you're not incurring any additional interest, right? I use credit card on a day-to-day basis, but I ensure my credit card's paid down as soon as I use it, right? Within a week or two, and I'm not missing the deadline. I'm not doing minimum payments. My cards are leveraged for points, right? So there's a benefit to those, but if you do have a high limit and you're constantly spending, not watching your spending and not budgeting, it could result in some problems later on down the road. Okay? Major money activities. So start maintaining personal financial records and documents. This is a little old school. Don't imagine many people have carrying around a banker's box anymore. It's all a lot of it's electronic now, right? So you have PDF versions, store them on your phone or the cloud or your computer, so on and so forth. So creating personal financial statements, balance sheet, cash flow statements, income and outflows. So those of you in the mindset to become a CPA, right? You're probably already doing this stuff, okay? Or you're doing it for a corporation or plan on doing it for a corporation, not yet doing it for yourself. I highly suggest you start there. Okay? That's important as well. And then creating a plan for spending, which is just your budget. Okay, so these core money management activities important for the capstone project, where you're going to be provided with essentially a case study of individual or a family, what their goals are, what their financial situations today, and be your job to assess and make some recommendations or build a plan around what potential options they may have, right? And it'll be up to you to present it. An organized system of financial records provides handling of daily business affairs, planning, measuring financial progress, completing required tax reports or tax returns. Okay, some of you may hire a third party to do that. That's fine. At the end of the year, or because you're a student, there may be some programs in place that offer discounts or free tax filing, which is quite easy. There are a lot of programs online or software that's available for free, at which you can do your own filings if they're quite simple, right? You're just a student, have minimal returns, or you have a part-time job and just one T4, anyone that can read can effectively do that, right? You have all these different businesses, all these different income streams. Might be better to hire a third party, right, to work with you on these things. And those of you who are looking to become CPAs probably already do this for yourselves. So that's great. Again, storage of financial documents. The general threshold is for CRA. You those of you who do decide to stay in Canada is 7 years, although the CRA can go back to an indefinite point in time. Just know that if you are chosen to undergo an audit. Okay, try and store them if they're all electronic versions, right? You'll have the space to store them indefinitely. Just keep them. This is just illustration. What not to keep? Well, yeah, there's certain things that might be less pertinent than others. But again, if you have the electronic copies and you're organizing them, takes a few kilobytes, store them somewhere, right? Don't necessarily need quarterly statement of accounts, but and you're provided with an annual one anyway, and usually the brokerage or financial institution that you're using will store those electronically for you, so not a big deal. Okay, when you're getting rid of electronic versions that are confidential, make sure you add to your recycle bin. Purposes for personal financial statements, we already know that, and a little redundant. When you're looking at a personal balance sheet, much like a balance sheet for a business, right? It's what do you own versus what do you owe equals your net worth. So those of you who may be interested in banking, very important too, when you're asking individuals, which are the owners of corporations, to provide a P&W, personal net worth statement, or fill out a form. We have a form internally called a personal statement of affairs. They put all their assets in, all their liabilities in, and you plug and play them into a template, and it gives you essentially assets minus liabilities and net worth. Okay. So if you own more than you owe, great, you're positive. But if you owe more than you own, not so great, you're in debt, right? Steps for creating a personal balance sheet, right? So your assets, what do your assets consist of? So liquid assets, cash, marketable securities, right? Any real estate, so property, right? Personal possessions, not as heavily weighed as you may think by financial institutions, right? And if you say, okay, well, I have a pound of gold here, well, that typically isn't accounted for as substantially as something that is visible, right, to these institutions, right? So cash and marketable securities in your bank account, real estate, it's an asset with your name on it. You're holding a nugget of gold somewhere. Well, you decide to sell that or pawn it, right? It's nothing. It's nothing to the institution afterwards, so they can't really secure on those, and nor can they ask you to liquidate that, right? If you're going through some sort of loan application and they decline you, and you have all these personal possessions, well, that's something that institution may not be too fond of. Okay, so when you're reporting these things, and when you're going through these personal assets, great if you're logging it yourself, but if you're going through a loan application, right, you have to make sure your liquid assets and your real estate items with all the AML, KYC policies, regardless of where you get these personal possessions from, are in line with your income and the story associated that, right? Because if there's something that's lopsided, the financial institutions will choose a different candidate, right? Or may decline altogether. Investment assets also visible, right? If you use a different brokerage account, you can provide a statement. That's outside of that institution. And your liabilities. So current liabilities, as many of you already know, debts that have to be paid within the year. Long term, it's 1 year or more. So your net worth is essentially a difference, okay? And your assets equals your liabilities, which are negative, right? Plus your net worth. Just reorganizing that that little triangle. Just a breakdown of Rose and Edgar's personal balance sheet. So this would be for a couple, right? So if you're given a case study with a couple, and there's a list of you're given a list of their assets, right? It'll be your job to kind of break that down and build a personal balance sheet for them. Or if they're providing the personal balance sheet, it'd be your job to analyze. These are just all items that are associated. I don't think there's anything of surprise or relevance here that require additional commentary. Pretty straightforward. Again, when you're looking at things from a banking standpoint, what they care about is what's in your accounts, securities, and insurance policies. Real estate, they don't care that much about the market value of your vehicle, your furniture and appliances, your audio and equipment, your home computer, your jewelry. Most of these items are depreciating types of assets. Jewelry, not huge either, but it can go in proportion. Won't be a decision maker most of the time. Okay, and other investment assets, retirement accounts, mutual funds, right? Those are your marketable securities. And liabilities, medical bills, credit cards, those are current liabilities, would be paid within the year. And long-term liabilities, car loan, mortgage, home improvement loan, typically that's tied into mortgage, or people may use a home equity line of credit and refinance that, blend it into their mortgage, student loans, so on and so forth. Okay, so these are the most common. So net worth of Edgar and Rose here, their assets minus liabilities, 159,240. So a person with high net worth may still have financial difficulties, right? They might be asset rich and cash poor, right? As a commercial banker, I see that all the time. Big time investors always looking to invest their cash. They have all these assets, right, that they look to continue to lever up, but not a ton of cash, because every time they acquire some cash or have cash in hand, it gets invested into a different asset, right? So there are scenarios where you may see high amounts of assets, right? Large assets, maybe real estate in the neighborhood of tens of millions of dollars, right? But then you look at liabilities, and the liabilities are the same. So if assets equal liabilities, there's effectively a zero net worth, right? So somebody with millions of assets could also have millions of liabilities, and therefore the net worth could be minimal. Okay. Cash inflows versus outflows, same thing. How much are you making versus how much are you spending? Okay. So how do you do this? Record your income, record how much you spend, and this is tied into your budget, and determine what you have left to save or invest. It's just a cash flow illustration. Okay. So these are all items that are core to what you would see in a personal cash flow statement, inflow and outflows. Okay. So analyzing your personal financial situation, okay, you need to, one, create a personal balance sheet and a cash flow statement. And you're asked to do that for individual or in case study. It's where you start and the steps associated with each. Okay. And then balance sheet analysis, how to the steps to having a better one is measure the progress towards your financial goals. So that comes with a higher frequency of or a higher touch point. So instead of doing an annual balance sheet, you might do it quarterly or you might do it monthly, right? To kind of see how things change and how you can tweak things to get to your goals a little bit faster, right? So when you initially build it, it's best to have more touch points to fine tune it until you start seeing progress. And then you can kind of do it on a longer frequency, right? Where everything goes status quo. So identify how your assets are distributed amongst different categories and calculate your current asset allocation. Those of you who decide to work with a financial planner, you're usually doing that on a quarterly at most, but most of the time it's an annual basis. Okay, so it's still important to do it on your own on a higher frequency so you can track these things. If you go offside 1 month, right? How do you rectify that versus go offside and not know for a year until your next financial review? Then it makes it a little bit more difficult to get back on track. Okay. So identify whether your investments are tax efficient, usually done by your accountant or your financial planner. Identify assets that may be lost, stolen, damaged, or destroyed, not as pertinent to individuals, maybe more so to businesses. And then summarize the types and extent of your debts, short-term, long-term, where is it occurring, right? What are the interest rates? And compiling your cash flow statements, highlight your income sources, as we know, reveal whether or not you are overspending, and assess your spending and saving patterns. Again, if you do it on a higher frequency, it's easier to catch things, catch scenarios of overspending sooner and rectify them sooner as opposed to later on and having a more difficult time for a longer frequency. Ratios, these will be important, so take note. You will have questions associated with these on your assignments, on your midterm and your finals. Okay, so debt ratio, calculated liabilities over net worth, current ratio, liquid assets over current liabilities, and liquid ratio or liquidity ratio, liquid assets over monthly expenses. Debt payment ratio, so monthly payments over your take-home pay. Savings ratio is your amount saved each month over your gross income. So budget, I think we all know what that is. Steps to creating a budget, right? So core items, much like everything else, set your goals. Where do you want to be? Where are you today and where do you want to be? Estimating your income. So today you make X amount of dollars. What does inflation look like? What are you expecting as you grow later and later in your career for income? Right? How can you forecast that? Therefore, how much more are you spending or how much more are you saving as a result of? Okay. Always best to make sure you have the income before you spend it, right? Don't spend it before you make it. But at the end of the day, best guess for estimating income. Okay. Budgeting emergency fund and savings, usually 6 months, right, of living expenses and costs. You need to set aside for an emergency fund. That is most ideal. Budgeting fixed expenses, your variable expenses, recording your spending, and then reviewing spending and saving patterns. Again, could be some cases weekly, monthly, most ideal, quarterly, fine once you're stabilized, and annualized, longer frequency, but can also work for those that are very well disciplined in their plan, right? So steps highlighted based on monthly budget. You go through that if you want. We won't go through that line by line. Pretty straightforward. And a successful budget should be well planned, realistic, flexible, and clearly communicated. So realistic is key here, right? If you're early in your career and your starting salary is $50,000, right? But your plans to become CEO of the company, that might not happen until decades later on down the road, right? So you can't really forecast for that salary until you get close to it. Maybe promotion or senior role 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the road. That becomes a little bit more realistic than, hey, plan to be CEO one day and want to make millions, right? Or plan to make millions. That is that's too difficult to forecast for. Okay. Being flexible to a certain extent, right? Building a buffer instead of being okay. This is how much I have to make. This is how much I have to spend. There could be some up months and there could be some down months due to some various scenarios. Okay. And clearly communicated maybe rules of engagement associated with your spending, right? So, okay, certain months or certain quarters or once a year, maybe there's a family trip. Okay, but if then another opportunity comes for a family trip because of a huge discount happens later on in the year or shortly after your first family vacation, that needs to be something that you have to be able to forego for the most part, but there's a plan, you really want it, and there's a great opportunity to do so. Maybe that means you have to wait another 18 months before your next family vacation, right? Because you have two so close together. So the cost associated, opportunity costs thereof, and being able to set some rules. Okay. Common reasons for saving. Well, emergency fund, right? For save some money for rainy days. Earning income on interest and savings, right? Investing effectively. Replacement of expensive items. So you buy a house, right? That house has a roof that eventually needs to be replaced. In some cases, it's 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, 30 years, but it does eventually have to be replaced likely in your lifetime if you decide to keep that one asset, right? And most people can't save that in 1 or 2 paychecks. So you have to forecast that in advance. Appliances, so on and so forth, right? High ticket items. Buying special items, special or higher ticket, maybe vehicles, right? Providing for long-term expenses, mortgages, right? Family, children. Selecting a saving technique. So you should make a regular periodic savings deposit. So fix it, save it on that cadence every paycheck or every month to save X amount of dollars. Pay yourself first. Table just to kind of highlight goal versus saving method versus locking into some level of investment or putting your money into some level of investment and how it grows over a fixed frequency. Okay. So rule 70, rule 72, when you're looking at compounding, we talked about that last class. It's quick and dirty math on doubling and how long it takes you to double based off of what your expected return is, your interest. Okay. So it's 72 divided by what that annual compounded interest is, or 70. You want to do the quick calculation, not as accurate as 72, but good enough. Okay. So some suggestions for dual income households: pooled income, right? Joint accounts, sharing the bills, going 50-50, or one income's higher than the other, proportionate contributions. And summary just touches on all the learning objectives. So that's it for week 2. Again, what I want you guys to do is stay on top of your chapters. So chapter 1, chapter 2 will be highlighted for assignment 1. Okay, so those questions are there and you can start it right at any time. There's no time limit on that. Time limits associated to assessments will be tied to midterm and final assignments, no, but hard due date. Okay, so try and have the due dates on, with the exception of the final, Fridays 11:59. Okay, you have plans for that weekend or that day, do it in advance. You have access to it. Okay, there should be no excuses and ample time to do so. There should be no excuses to why certain assessments are late, right? No exceptions. Going forward, again, assignment 1 has been postponed to due date January 30th, but everybody will have access to it today, right? Or had access to it last week if you've enrolled into McGraw-Hill. So please make sure you enrolled. I think only a handful of you thus far. So the rest of you do need to enroll. Again, you're provided with enough notice and all the instructions up front. There should be no excuses to why you can't complete your assignments on time. Okay. So week 3, looking forward to meeting some of you in person or virtually. So Monday 5:30 to 8:20. That should be solidified now. If there are any changes down the road, that will also be a surprise to me, but the schedule should be solidified going forward. Okay. All right. Have a good evening, everybody. We will see you next week.